So we're obviously here to mainly talk about cryptocurrency and blockchain. And there's lots of buzzwords in the industry, but those are the two main areas that we're going to talk about today. But I'm obviously going to come at it from a financial kind of background. So I apologize now, but I think it's important just to take it all in context. So a little bit about my story, if you like. A client of mine mentioned Bitcoin about 3 years ago, and I completely dismissed them, said, no, you don't want to touch that. I think I probably mentioned drugs. I probably mentioned dark web, and just said, leave it alone. If only I knew what I knew now. That was 3 years ago, and the same thing happened again 2 years ago. Another client said, have you heard of Bitcoin, John? I went, oh, no, not sure. It's not regulated, so I can't talk to you about it. So I'm not really sure, and I just dismissed it. And the reason why the YouTube and the Netflix logo's there is because it felt like Bitcoin was following me around when I was online or watching Netflix or even on a plane. There was a documentary or someone was talking about Bitcoin or there was some mention of Bitcoin, even an advert in the screen from like someone like eToro or something like that. And it just kind of felt like it was following me around. So kind of middle of last year, my sister also mentioned Bitcoin. She's a bit more intelligent than me. She's a vet. So she went to university and she was saying, you know, what about this Bitcoin thing? And so I started to think, well, I need to just do some research, you know, look into it more and understand it more and not just dismiss it without understanding the facts. Like you would do with any investment, okay, with any product. So I started looking into it, started going onto Twitter, onto YouTube, and I've got some faces on the screen there. Some of you might know Philip Nunn here in the corner, and I decided that, I'm kind of jumping forward a little bit, but I went to a conference in February of this year, and I'd already gone into crypto, but it kind of really enforced the decision I'd actually reached by meeting some of these guys. The guy over here, Gavin Brown, he's an economist at the Manchester Metropolitan University, is a qualified accountant. And then there's a guy over here called Vlad from Bristol. He's a techie and he runs a software company in Bristol. And Charles Radcliffe, who I was meeting the other day, he used to work in banking. And Osborne Clarke is an international legal firm, which I started to talk to. But just slightly going back a bit to middle of last year, I really decided I just needed to read and listen and research because too many people are jumping into crypto without understanding the facts. I'm not saying you should be indecisive, but I do think you should just step back, have a listen, have a read, research, and as I've said, and do that again and repeat it. And these are some of the places where I started on YouTube. Some books, a little mention to Cryptopulse, because we've got two guys in the room we're going to be speaking to afterwards, who've been really helpful, especially more recently, with just putting some great content together and helping with my education. And again, I mentioned Twitter. Originally I started a WhatsApp group for friends and family, and then people said to me, why don't you just start, go on to Twitter. So we had a WhatsApp group, and I actually was called, on Twitter at the beginning, I was called Crypto John. And I decided that, no, why am I hiding? Why am I hiding my real name, if you like? So I came out, if you like, and actually became, maybe that's not the right phrase, but you know what I mean. So I came out as John Boatman _UK. And I just feel that was important for me. Just initially, I wasn't really sure how I was going to take this and the route I was going to take maybe from a collaboration and business point of view. So what I'm saying here is, please do research. Do some research, read some stuff, listen to people. When you listen to people, or even when you look at what they've liked on Twitter, you get a feel for a person. There's so much content out there. There is content in the UK. There is a lot, obviously, in the US, which most of these YouTube channels are from the US. And some of these people are trading as well, which I haven't got time for. But there is some really good content out there, and it's important you get that information. And this is really just backed up by some statistics here. one in 20 Brits, 3 million people, have actually invested without actually fully understanding what they're investing in. So I think that just reiterates what I'm saying. So again, repeating what I've said. Listen, read, research, learn, repeat, just like you would do for any other financial decision you make. When a client comes to me and wants to look at investing money, whether that be in pensions or investments, which are regulated investments, they want to understand the options. They want to understand the choices. So just like you would do with any financial decision you make, whether you buy a new car, house, PC that works, etc., etc. And bank account, which will become a little bit more obvious why I've put that there. So the history of money. I've started to kind of look back into history, because even though I'm, during the, my normal trade is as a financial advisor, an independent financial advisor. I don't work for a bank, so don't beat me up. But I've always been an independent financial advice, but I didn't really understand the history of money. So I started to come across this more with some of the educators, as I call them, who I'd been watching and listening to, and started to kind of go back into history and realize that, money as we know it is relatively new. I think, we used to trade with grain or corn or cattle or whatever it might be. And the reason for gold being there is not that long ago in history, people used to trade with gold, pieces of gold. Do you know many people walking around with bags of gold? I have actually got one client who's got some gold pieces. But there's not many people walking around the street with bags of gold anymore. But that's what used to happen, and it wasn't that long ago. And then suddenly the governments decided, oh no, it was actually around about World War I, actually, that the gold standard, as it was called, and the world wars actually meant that when the US got involved, there was a change. And if you read the book I mentioned before, the Bitcoin Standard book, it talks about the history of those decisions that were made around the gold standard, as it was called, and how we moved towards what's called fiat. So again, being in financial services, you might think, well, he probably knew what fiat currency was. I didn't have a clue what fiat currency was. I'd never heard the word. I thought it was a car. I'll be honest, it is a car, isn't it? So started, when you start to learn about these things, you actually start to sit back and just, take note of what's going on. Fiat money is, as it says there, a currency that a government has declared is the legal tender. This is what we will use. And someone did this to me last year. They put 2 notes in front of me. So this is a £5 and £10 note. Now what is it? It's just paper. It's just paper, isn't it? But what makes that worth £10 and that worth £5? It's because the governments or the people, us, have granted it value. The people have granted it value, not anything else. It's just a piece of paper. It could be a piece of metal, but if you say that that's worth £5 and it's a piece of metal, then it's worth £5 worth of metal. But it's just an illusion that the people have granted. And someone said that to me last year, and I just thought, well, no, it's what we use. It's what we've been so used to it, but it's not been that long that it wasn't like that. It used to be gold pieces. And as you might have seen recently, a tweet that Fiat, the car company, did actually send out. It was actually, I think, this week, or last week. They're kind of confused why they're getting all this hashtag fiat currency. So I do some talks in schools, and we talk about money. What is money? So I'm bringing some of that to this presentation because, even in financial services, I didn't really sit and study what money is. We're now used to using some of these devices. I had a cup of coffee with Charles Radcliffe, who was on the screen earlier the other day, and it was in the engine shed in Bristol, which is nearer to where I come from. And he just went up and pressed his wearable device, his Apple Watch, and paid for the coffee. So, people are using contactless all the time. And would you believe it was introduced 10 years ago? How many people, are spending their money? They're not actually spending their money. They're maybe using contactless or obviously Apple Pay. Apple Pay is huge. It'd be nice to have an Apple coin. And these are just some statistics that came out at the end of last year. 75% of people in this country are using contactless, and that's doubled in the last 12 months. And again, 75% use online banking. I've got people I know in their 80s are using online banking. Okay. And something that happened at the end of last year in the UK is the switch, where there was more transactions done by debit cards than there were with cash. And that's the first time that's happened. Okay. A few more statistics. I'm in financial services, so statistics, sorry. So again, it's something that when you look into it, I've put millennials on the screen there because I think this technology is attracting a lot of the younger generation. I'm 50 years old. I am attracted to it, but there's a lot of data that suggests that cryptocurrency is very popular within the younger generation, the millennials. So just a few statistics there. And what I found amazing was that actually, if you look at the last statistic there, hardly any of these individuals, the younger generation, visit a bank branch. And I've actually been in my local town, which is Chippenham, down in Wiltshire. And I've been in Chippenham at 8:45 in the morning, and there are people queuing outside NatWest Bank, and there are people inside the bank walking around, making sure it's all nice and tidy, and they're all standing there waiting for the bank to open. Well, why don't you just open the bank? Let the people in. And obviously, most of the people in the queue are probably over 65. No disrespect to my mum, but you know, it doesn't make any sense. So the millennials, the younger generation, people in the room, people watching online, I think the reason you're maybe involved in crypto or you're interested in cryptocurrency because you're interested in tech. You know, I was interested in finance and tech, so this has brought me to here. And I think as well, if you talk to people in schools, and this is statistics slightly older than the school population, but young adults, 24-year-olds, you know, the under 24, 60% of them would prefer to have everything on their phone or an app. They'd work their bills, their payments, etc. So I'm kind of leading you from the banking and the way we had been operating in the past to show you what's happening with technology. So here is something that's happened in the UK, predominantly, with technology as it's advanced and innovation. We have lots of bank closures, but we also have some newer banking alternatives, shall we say. I don't know if anyone in the room is using any of the ones on the right. I think Ben has told me he's using Monzo before. I actually am using the bottom two. I've used the bottom two, really good. And I've missed one out because Didi, who's speaking later, has already mentioned Wirex, which is it's not really a bank, is it? It's more of a debit card system which uses crypto. So there's lots of alternatives, and the speed of change is crazy. So how do we get to this position? How do we get to the increase of the knowledge of cryptocurrency? Well, we had a crisis back in 2007-8, and I remember it quite well because I sat in front of clients who'd lost money. It's not a nice meeting to have. And we all maybe know about why it happened, and I won't go into that, and I won't get all political about it, but the point I'm making is it happened. It was one of the worst crises since the 1930s, and the Lehman Brothers went bust, and this is the S&P 500 is the stock market in America, and this is what kind of happened in the lead up, and you might remember it started with mortgage debt that was packaged up and sold on and on and on, and everything just crashed. So we had a massive crisis, and people lived through that crisis. And so what the banks do, the banks around the world decide they'll print more money. And this is part of the bigger problem that we have right now. The financial system in the UK and around the world is broken. And we have banks around the world that have continued to print money. They just continue to print. I think it's something like $164 trillion worth of global debt. Global debt. It's more, you'll see in a minute, it's more than we have actually got money. You know, there's not enough money to cover the debt. If you don't know what SNB is, it's the Swiss National Bank. So you've got the Fed, obviously, in America at the bottom. ECB is the European Central Bank, Bank of England, etc., Japan and China. And we've lived through a time where interest rates have also gone, I mean, I don't know about you, I bought my first property in the 80s, I'm a bit older, and interest rates were 15%. And when I've done this talk in schools, they've said, oh, were interest rates really 6%? And I'm like, well, they were, but they were 15% back in the 80s. So we've been through periods of higher interest rates. And you're also in a situation now where, I mean, you've seen maybe recently interest rates increase. That is the Bank of England base rate. If you can get 1 or 2% in the bank with your money, tell me about it, because there aren't that many banks paying very good interest. So at the moment, people are losing money. They've got their money in the bank, interest rates are very low, but inflation's increasing, so in real terms, they're losing money. And the general population, when talking about money, don't understand what's happening. They don't understand that. They don't understand that their inflation is eating into their money. They're not getting the same returns that they need. Okay, so one of the reasons we're in the room or online at the moment is because we're here because of something called Bitcoin that was created back in 2008 by a person or a group. It could have been a lady, which my wife points out. It could have been a lady, Satoshi Nakamoto. And he came up with what maybe is a solution. And you'll see here I've covered a couple of things here about the kind of the two challenges that Bitcoin looked to solve. The trust in the trustless system. So normally when you're trading money from one to the other, there is a counterparty or a centralized party like a bank, whether that, or it might be PayPal. So there's a centralized organization. So we were looking to solve that problem and the double spend problem. How do I know that if I send money to you, you're going to send me the goods back? So, or the money, whatever it might be. Some of you might know there are a total of 21 million Bitcoin. There are about 17 million in circulation at the moment. Some of those have probably been lost. Some people have died without telling their relatives they had Bitcoin. There was a guy, and I think he was in the Bristol area, Kevin and Ben might back me up on this, where he lost a hard drive, and he remembered he'd lost he recycled or sent the hard drive off for recycling or put it in the bin. Am I right? And he was a Welsh guy, or was in Wales, was it Wales? And he went to the landfill site looking for his hard drive, which he reckoned, I think it was about £7 million at the time. He's still looking. I would as well if it was £7 million or $7 million. So he threw away a hard drive. So there are lots of Bitcoin that is not actually ever going to be in circulation. It's been lost or it's been stolen, but there are only 21 million. So there's no organization that's going to print more money, as I said before. There's only 21 million. So cryptocurrency is deflationary. Okay? Important point to remember. Now, I don't know what it's worth today, right now, but when I put this presentation together, I know we've had an interesting week, shall we say. When I went to the conference in February, we had an interesting week that day too, when we were actually in the middle of the conference, and one of the speakers actually had their Coinbase app and showed the Coinbase app amount at the beginning of the presentation and at the end of the presentation, and it had gone down by about £2,000. And he was prepared to show the numbers. So I don't know what the value of Bitcoin is today. I think it's definitely below $7,000. But if when I put this presentation together at the beginning of the week, it was $7,000. But what's important, and I didn't realize this at the beginning, is you don't have to buy one Bitcoin. You can buy a proportion of it. You can buy a fractional amount of Bitcoin or another cryptocurrency like Bitcoin Private. So I talked about trust in the trustless system, the double spend problem, something that was solved, in my opinion, by the white paper on Bitcoin that Satoshi Nakamoto issued in 2008. All right, so to have a cryptocurrency or digital currency, you need to have a system that doesn't need a centralized counterparty. And I believe that cryptocurrency actually presents that solution, okay, with the use of blockchain. Bit of fun. You might have heard this story. guy in America in 2010, in 2010 Bitcoin was was a penny, and he bought 2 pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin. Now it comes up and it goes a bit viral around about May of every year. If you go online in May of every year, you normally find something mentioned about this transaction. But we are going to have to get to a stage where we're not accumulating our tokens on our crypto, but we're actually spending our tokens. And this was the first person to actually transact and spend his crypto. And if you look at the numbers, you'll work out that those 2 pizzas were about, depending on what number you use, between $60 million and $200 million, depending on the range you want to look at from the beginning of this year to the last week. And I think what I'm getting across here is that we are in the very early stages of adoption, and innovation is still happening. There are over 1,500 cryptocurrencies. Are they cryptocurrencies? Are they tokens? Are they assets? Are they utility tokens? You have to be careful when you say cryptocurrencies. But what I want to get across is that, do not invest in this technology to make money, all right? Because right now, you're not going to do that. You might do that for a short period of time, but I've learnt that I don't think that is the advice or the tips or the guidance that should be given. You should be buying the technology, you should be buying the innovation, you should be buying for the future. And if you look at the history of what's been happening, you'll realize that there have been some great periods, but there also have been some retrace or negative periods, okay? So these are just some examples. So if you bought cryptocurrency at the beginning of this year, one, you might not be in the room, all right? Because you may not ever invest in cryptocurrencies again. But if you are still in the room, then you probably bought the technology rather than to make money quickly, get rich quick, okay? There have been negatives and there have been positives. It's not a get rich quick. Buy the technology, learn about the technology, learn about what's going on, okay? This is the last 12 months, up to the beginning of this week. So if you'd invested a year ago, people forget a year ago, Bitcoin was worth about $3,200 approximately. And it's easily forgotten. But in traditional investments, if you make 10% in 12 months, you're normally happy. You have to understand we're going through an early adoption stage, and we haven't got there. And someone said to me, if you buy cryptocurrency, someone said this to me last year, if you bought Bitcoin or you bought Litecoin or Bitcoin Private, whatever cryptocurrency you bought, and you say you had 100 of them, you've still got 100 of them today. Forget about the value of in pounds or fiat currency, you've still got 100 of the token that you bought, okay? It's not nice to look at the value, okay, but I was looking at the value every day, probably 5 times a day. I don't do that now, okay? I just think I've bought the tokens, I've bought the technology, I've bought the projects that I like, and I've decided to hold them. I've still got them, whether the value's gone down or not. I've still got the tokens. You've still got 100 Bitcoin Private. Doesn't matter what the value is at the moment. Are you going to sell them? Are you going to use them? Probably right now not. Matt might kick me for this because he's going to tell us about a wallet. So the last 12 months have been really good for Bitcoin, but the last 7 months or so haven't been so good for Bitcoin. Does it matter? It doesn't matter, okay? But this is all about this emotional roller coaster. And this is not just to do with cryptocurrency. This is to do with any investment that has volatility, has risk. Are you a high-risk investor? You probably are a high-risk investor if you invest in cryptocurrency. You wouldn't put all your money in crypto. Maybe you would, and we'll hear that presentation later, okay? But it's your decision. You will do your research, and you will decide for yourself and your family what is the right decision for you, okay? Emotions, okay? I've put this on Twitter quite a few times, just not when it's always going down, when things are going up as well. It's all very well to invest when things are going up. In December, everyone's getting in. Oh, I'm going to miss out. You've heard the saying, FOMO, fear of missing out. So everyone's jumping on the train. okay? But how many of the people stayed on the train? Because as it started to come down, my sister's still on the train, but she and I have different opinion on this. She was looking for a quick fix, a quick return, but she started to realize that this is not what it's about. So it's the emotions. People don't normally buy when it's down the bottom. Some institutions do. Talk about institutions later. I'm just going to go through a few slides quickly because of time. This just shows the dominance of Bitcoin. This number's actually increased. I saw it online this morning. It's now 50%. So Bitcoin's dominance, as you can see, has decreased when other tokens became available. And recently, as kind of like the store of value, if you like, the digital gold, sometimes referred to, there are lots of traders that trade crypto, but they end up back in Bitcoin as their kind of store of value. And that started to increase recently with the volatility. So last year, somebody showed me this, and I think it's really important to remember, just think before you buy. Before you press the button to buy, just think about some of these things. As I've said already, do your own research. Don't go to a financial advisor because he can't give you advice because it's not regulated. Don't go down the pub because do your own research. Do some research, please. Read some books. Listen to podcasts, Cryptopulse, okay? People then, when they've done the research, what then happens is, oh, I'm not sure, and they're indecisive. You've got to back yourself. You've done your research, you go with it, all right? They also don't invest enough. Now, I was one of those people, I'll be honest. Last year, middle of last year, I invested some money. But from what I now know, I would have invested more money. My wife's in the corner, so I have to be careful. Don't use a credit card. Don't take out a loan. That happened a lot. You might have seen at the end of last year, banks stopping credit card usage. Selling without making a profit or after making a small profit. Why would you sell if you've lost 50%, why would you sell? You've got the tokens, you've bought the investment, you've bought the technology. You're not trying to get rich quick. You just want to you've bought the technology, so why would you sell? Sell after a dip, which is what I'm saying. Thinking too short term. And obviously, really important, don't invest what you can't afford to lose. It's like going to a casino. When you walk into a casino, we all want to win. I went to Vegas last year for my 50th. Of course I wanted to win, but you have to accept that you might lose. And if you have that attitude, it's a lot easier to deal with. And in the context of the global market we are in, this is a little bit out of date. This is the beginning of this year. Cryptocurrencies are tiny. There's nothing, okay? And you may know the numbers are out of date. You've seen, Apple recently a $1 trillion organization, and the cryptocurrency market has obviously dipped. But we're so small in comparison to the stock market and physical money, all right? Just bear that in mind, and remember the number that's not on the screen. I was going to have a big flash of red. $164 trillion of global debt. 164 trillion. Do you see that number anywhere on the screen? No, because it's a lot of money and it's crazy. So in some ways, is cryptocurrency the pin that's going to burst the bubble of the financial system that's already there, rather than what people have said, that Bitcoin's the bubble? Well, we've had loads of bubbles in Bitcoin. We've had retraces, we've had negatives, but the global system of debt, that's actually the bubble, that's the problem. I found this interesting. I saw this online. Some of you might have seen this. Just to remember, when you're talking to people in schools especially, it makes you realize these things happen so quickly. Snapchat is gone and, it's here. Maybe they've had some problems recently. Share price has gone down. The younger generation don't like it, so they jump and do something else. In 2006, the iPhone wasn't around. The iPad wasn't around. It's mad. It's only 12 years ago. Only 12 years ago. Bitcoin obviously wasn't around. Blockchain wasn't around. I'm going to race through these ones. Just about earlier, just adoption. Okay. So obviously the orange line you can see in the middle is the plane. So eventually took off. And as you get to the right, you'll see that they're going quicker up because the adoption of technology is much quicker with the speed of the internet and things like that. So you've got the mobile phone. You've got things like the PlayStation, the kind of SLR kind of cameras. And right at the end, you've got Bitcoin. Just quickly touch on this. There's something like 2 billion people around the world who haven't got a bank account or haven't got access to a financial institution. If you can't see the numbers, particularly because I'm in the way, the darker number means they haven't got a bank account or they can't access a financial institution. You might have seen this online a lot because it's not just about the UK. Cryptocurrency is global and it could help a lot of people. It could make a lot of difference. Just moving a little bit onto regulation or what is cryptocurrency? So there is argument around the world. What is cryptocurrency? Is it money or currency? Is it a commodity? Is it security, utility token, or something else? In 2014, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, quite a few years ago, made a comment. They've recently formed the Global Financial Innovation Network. They are trying to understand globally what cryptocurrency is and where it fits. Different countries class it as money, some countries class it as commodities, etc. I spoke to my accountant a couple of weeks ago about cryptocurrency. She was really interested. She wouldn't let me pay her in cryptocurrency yet, but she said, well, how can you regulate it? It's global. And what was gold? Gold was global, wasn't it? Gold was our global currency. Why couldn't we have a digital global currency? Recently, we've had a lot of talk about institutions. Do we actually want institutions back? Did they not mess it up in the first place? But we might need some institutional money to come into the space. And there's been talk of an ETF, an exchange-traded fund. I won't bore you with the details. I'll talk to you afterwards if you wish. But you can track most things. You can buy an ETF in most things. Okay. And I thought the interesting point, this is quite recent, this survey at the bottom here, Reuters. Do you not think the financial institutions are looking at buying cryptocurrency or buying technology businesses? They are. And actually, it's been proven that some institutions say one thing one day, and behind the scenes, they are actually doing the opposite. That's actually been proven. Going back to gold again. My wife prefers silver, to be honest with you. But gold. So I talked earlier about, do you know anyone who owns gold? And many investors buy gold through ETFs. And this is just showing what happened when the gold ETF, the first gold ETF was launched in 2004. And what happened after that happened. Will there be a crypto Bitcoin ETF? What will happen when it's launched? Will it be launched? There's quite a few commentators that think it could be launched by the end of this year, maybe next year. But are we actually seeing the birth of a new asset class? Okay? Why wouldn't you maybe invest a little bit of your wealth in this new asset class? But until it's properly regulated, and some people will argue they don't want regulation or they want light regulation, until a granny's lost £100,000 on Bitcoin, the regulators are not going to come in and be too heavy-handed, I don't think. We'll see what happens. I won't go into too much detail. I'm not a techie, but I needed to understand what blockchain was. And when I did understand what blockchain was, I realized that many, many industries and many businesses, and really for me, that has become much more interesting than the crypto side. Crypto side's done. I've done the research, I've bought some tokens, I've accumulating them, set aside some money for that. But the actual blockchain technology is, to me, fascinating. And obviously it's the technology that originates from Bitcoin. So I won't go into great detail because of time, but it fixes the double spend problem and it's highly efficient. So why wouldn't businesses look at it? And many businesses are looking at it. And when I started to research, I talked to accountants, solicitors, IT specialists, and a lot of the big companies in those areas have got departments that look after blockchain, advise companies on blockchain or distribution ledger technology. Okay, I've seen great examples in education, finance, food, legal, property, and I've put a common theme at the bottom: supply chain. If you can see that, music. You might have heard of automotive system or automotive, so cars that are going to have digital wallets in them. There are many, crowdfunding. There's loads of industries already looking. Logistics is huge as well. So there's loads of industry that is using blockchain, okay? And just repeating that, really, there's departments within big organizations that have do-it-yourself. Go on to PwC, big accountancy firm in the UK. Go onto the website. Osborne Clarke, I've got to know them quite well. They're international. They had an office in Bristol and London, and I was talking to the London office. They came down to our recent seminar that we had in Bristol. They're advising companies on the legal side of blockchain. Look, understand smart contracts. Understand what that's about, if you don't already. A recent report about the money that's being invested in blockchain. IT companies, software, Intel, they've all got departments or services available for blockchain. It's huge business already. Some commercial examples. In our Bristol seminar, we had a guy who I mentioned earlier, Vlad. He was demonstrating a food protocol on blockchain, where they looked at the problem they had with the E. coli disease. I think it was 2011 when the E. coli disease hit, and they couldn't find the source of the problem. It took them 3 months, this is without the technology, it took them 3 months to source the farm where the cucumbers came from, which had caused the problem. Meanwhile, I think about 30 people died, and they're putting together a food protocol, which they demonstrated in Bristol in our seminar, where it takes, I think it's 7 minutes to find, as long as the data's there, with blockchain, it will, and that chart over on the right-hand side there, that was from his presentation. So it's all about the data and how you work the data, but that's being done on blockchain. I think some of you may have seen the Richard Branson tweet recently, tweeting about blockchain, the project he's involved in. All of these are to do with supply chain and food, okay, IBM. And my last slide before the answer to my question, which you may have forgotten by now, about the builders, is tokenization. So I think this is huge, and we're not really talking about it in a big way, but the institutions are talking about it. And there are projects that are looking to tokenize companies, all right, especially newer companies, new startups. So why wouldn't you issue a digital token rather than a share? So you buy a share in Apple or Next or not Marks and Spencer's, that's not a good example today. They've shut 7 stores. But why wouldn't you have a digital token? And if you think about it on a platform, you think about it on a blockchain, just go through that in your own mind. It's a way of tokenizing a company. And why can't I pass a share of a company to someone in the audience from my phone? Why do I need to go through a third party to do that and pay the fees and so on? Am I doing myself out of a job? Am I future-proofing my business, maybe? That's another way of looking at it. So blockchain can help in this area. And this is too big a subject to put it on one slide. You could probably do that in one afternoon. That to me is huge. So my message really is, I got in crypto because I wanted to make some money quickly. But I wasn't going to probably sell the crypto, so why was I thinking that? Well, then as I started to learn about cryptocurrency, but more importantly, the technology behind it, I realized that this technology is going to change the world. And why wouldn't we have a global currency?
We started this podcast at the start of this year, and it was really born out of the frustration that there really wasn't much good information out there, especially in the UK, about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. So we have kind of skyrocketed, and thankfully, unlike the crypto market, haven't fallen off yet. So we're actually, although we're the UK's #1, we're downloaded in over 140 different countries, which includes all kinds of exotic places, like French Polynesia is one of the really weird examples, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, if you can even say the word. And we get about 500 listeners every day, which is really cool because we'd never done a podcast before. And we really started it because we wanted to learn. We wanted to learn from individuals all across the globe about what crypto was, how blockchain is going to change the industry. And through that process, Ben and I have really learned a lot ourselves, and we've built a fantastic community of listeners. So to any of those watching now on the live feed, thank you for tuning in. For any of them listening on today's show, we really appreciate all the support that that you've given us. So we're published on all major podcasting platforms, which includes things like iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Cast. We actually have our own website, which is cryptopulse.co.uk, where you can listen to. We get a lot of listens through the website, and it just gets shared all across the internet. So it's something that's been really exciting. But our crucial tagline is that we empower our listeners to make informed decisions. So we don't ever give advice. What we do is talk about some of the things that we've done, some of the things that we've learned, including some of the bad mistakes we've made. We're very happy to share those.
And there's been a few.
There's been quite a few, but there's been more good ones, I think.
Yeah.
So these are some of the guests that we've had on the show. We've had people like Philip Nunn, who's one of the UK's top cryptocurrency and blockchain influencers. He's an ICO advisor. He's worked on loads of different projects. So he's actually become a friend of the show because he's been on twice, which is really great. And it's been fascinating to reach out to all of these experts in their own different fields, because it's not having a hotline to anyone in this sector and saying, hey, can we ask you a load of questions for 30 minutes? And because we're curious. We've also got projects like Didi and, of course, Bitcoin Private. We had Jake Boatman on, which was a really awesome episode. And we, because Bitcoin Private came on our radar because of Philip Nunn, actually. He was talking to me about it one day. And that's really what's brought us here. So we've created this amazing network of listeners and mentors for us as well. And we've had Richard Burton, who worked with Vitalik Buterin at the Ethereum project and has also launched Balance Wallet. And Sarah Simeone, I think I'm saying her last name right, John? So Sarah's amazing. In fact, I asked her how to pronounce her last name, and she said, you decide. So she's Italian.
And we did.
And I thought Simeone sounded quite good. So
she was a genius. Actually.
She's amazing. So if you haven't checked us out, please do. Has anyone here actually listened to our show before?
Yeah.
A few people,
okay.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. All right, fantastic. So for anyone that has listened before, they're amazing photos.
Sultry.
Yeah. For anyone that has listened to our show before, they know that we always ask our guests one question at the start. Does anyone know what that is? Yep. Okay.
Tell us about your story in crypto.
Okay,
Yeah.
So it's a really good chance for us to introduce ourselves to you in a little bit more detail. So Ben, I'll let you kick off because I've stolen the limelight again.
Well,
tell us how your blockchain journey began.
Mine was quite a simple one, really. I was reading a Reddit article back in 2012 that was just kind of talking a little bit about Bitcoin and some of the technology behind it. And Bitcoin actually was kind of in its early phases, and there weren't really a lot of places that you could buy it. But with some research, I found an exchange online and spent the last...
What year was this, though?
I think this was late 2012, early 2013.
Very early.
So it was quite early.
So you can see I hate him already because he bought Bitcoin in like 2013.
It was,
so.
yeah, I mean, it was a punt because I
Okay.
don't think there was a lot of information. There certainly wasn't a lot of people, talking about it at the time. And in fact, I think the market cap for Bitcoin was under 10, 20 million at the time, so it was was low.
Okay.
So I used the last of the money that I had at the time. I was 23. I didn't have a lot, and I bought some Bitcoin. And I won't say how much, but I got in early, and then actually forgot that I had them because life takes over. And I think it was last year.
You didn't lose them though, thankfully.
No, I didn't lose them, thankfully. But then last year we were heading out to Croatia, funnily enough. And I was queuing up at the airport, and I was reading a BBC article talking about the price of Bitcoin and how Bitcoin had skyrocketed and it had beat all the analysts, and it was doing great things. And I thought, well, that's amazing. I totally forgot that I had it. And, and that was it. It kind of reignited my passion for Bitcoin specifically, but also blockchain technology. And I think that was kind of the real start for me was back last year.
Cool. Awesome.
And we'll throw it back at you, actually. I mean,
how did my journey begin?
Yours is relatively
Well, mine
short.
didn't begin in 2013.
Yeah.
It actually began very early last year. So I still class myself as a crypto veteran.
But we do say, I mean, one
you're
year
definitely a veteran. You're probably the biggest veteran
Yeah,
I know, I think, apart from Satoshi himself.
Well, yeah, I mean, we were pals. We hung out in the day. But we say that a year in cryptocurrency, I mean, it's like dog years,
It
right?
is.
A
What
year in
is dog years what? I
is-
mean, someone probably knows this. That's 7 or 10 years. But,
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's the equivalent.
you are how long have you been in it based on
Practically dead now, I would say.
Right, okay. Well, before you do die,
Yes.
please make sure that you
Yeah,
the keys.
sure. I'll give you the private keys.
Oh,
They're all
thank you.
yours.
So, yeah, my blockchain journey began really like most people's, I think. Cryptocurrency was on my radar early last year. It was actually part of, it came on my radar through a mentorship group that I'm in, an entrepreneur mentorship group called Shank Minds, which is run by a chap called Peter Shankman, who's written a bunch of books, he's a public speaker, he's quite a well-known guy in the States, he's based in New York, and I've met him a few times, I'm part of this group, and he was saying, oh, I bought some Litecoin today, and I thought, okay, what's Litecoin? And I opened a Coinbase account, I'd heard of Bitcoin and didn't really know what it was. And a few of the guys are on there saying, look, it's kind of like Bitcoin, but it's slightly different, and we think it's the silver if Bitcoin's the gold. And I put a relatively small amount for me in. I won't say how much, but it was nothing more than I could afford to lose. And this was the crucial thing. I tried it, I tested it out, and then I started to learn what blockchain was. And holy shit, my world opened up. Literally, for the most part of last year, I was watching YouTube videos, I was reading books, I was putting things on Facebook, I was pestering him pretty much every day. In fact, Ben helped me, and this is quite an embarrassing story, open my first ever account with an exchange, which was...
But I mean, it's pretty tricky. I mean, if you've never done it before and if you haven't traded traditional
exchange,
stocks
we had to open it on anyway. So it was hard work. So I learned how to buy some altcoins, and I was getting really into this. But I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a business builder, so I've built a couple of companies. Most notably, I've built a plastic recycling business, so completely out of technology. But one of the things that I have learned is that understanding new technologies, even archaic technologies like pay-per-click and Google search, and applying them in a traditional business sense meant I won. I won against a lot of my competitors because I embraced new technologies. And you probably sit here, laugh now and think, oh, pay-per-click or Google or SEO or even having a blooming website in the recycling sector.
There are still businesses
is kind of a rarity. So for me, I don't care about the price of a coin. I have no time for trading. I think that day trading represents a great opportunity for some people if they want to get into that.
We tried it.
We tried it. Never again.
Never again.
It was
a week of sleepless
horrific
nights, and we just went mad.
Well, I mean, we learned how to do
us.
some arbitrage, and it's like, oh my god, it's actually really, really stressful, especially when you're running two businesses and a podcast
So stressful
together. So that was fun. So yeah, for me, it's not about cryptocurrencies; it's about blockchain, and a cryptocurrency is just one use of blockchain.
Yep.
So. As you probably all know, today's talk really is about pivoting business into blockchain. But what we wanted to do first is tell you a story. And every good story has certain events that we can learn from. So our story is called Blockchain or Bust. Now, you might recognize one of those logos on there.
Yeah. So this is a really interesting one, and I think for me it's one of the biggest examples of a company that should have adopted a new technology but didn't, against advice and the markets. And of course it is the story of Blockbuster. Now, I've got the facts here. We're going to run through them in order. So Blockbuster was founded in 1985 and opened their first store in Dallas.
Does anyone remember that?
The Blockbuster card.
Yeah. Did anyone have a Blockbuster card? Yeah.
Did anyone ever? Well, yeah. I mean, that's it. It was VHS or
Yeah. A VH what?
A VHS.
Oh, I do remember.
I mean,
that
old school. In 1994, Viacom acquired Blockbusters for $8.4 billion, which was an enormous acquisition. I mean, this is kind of like the pre-tech days before the dot-com boom of 1997. So this was a huge acquisition. But we later find out that actually potentially not the greatest acquisition at all. In 1997, a disgruntled customer walks into Blockbuster and returns Apollo 13.
What, the actual Apollo 13?
The actual Apollo 13, dragging it on a chain. Takes the VHS back to the store, and it was 6 weeks overdue. Now, I don't know if anybody remembers how bad the fees were at Blockbuster, but he incurred a $40 fee for 6 weeks overdue. Now, we later find out that the guy that returned this was Reed Hastings, and in 1998, Reed Hastings went on to found Netflix. Partly because, and he said this publicly, because he was petrified of telling his wife how much the fees were, and he started thinking about how he could solve the problem, not just for himself, but also for other people across the world.
There's a lesson in that, isn't there? Don't, if you've got a business...
Tell your wife everything.
Oh, okay, that
Yes.
one, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, there is. Yeah, so an interesting one. So he founded Netflix, which was really focused on the DVD market. Now, the DVD market at the time was absolutely minuscule. A DVD player back in 1998 cost about $1,000, and only 1% of Americans actually had a DVD player. So it was, it was small by comparison.
I remember when they were £1,000 in the shops.
Yeah, easily.
I mean, I remember
easily.
seeing
And
them
DVDs were hard to get hold of, and
Right,
the
yeah.
ranges were poor. So anyway, Blockbuster at the time, back in the glory days, I think they were worth about $4.5 billion around the time. They weren't interested in the DVD market, focusing on VHS, and Reed Hastings was sort of left on the sidelines to sort of fly under the radar a bit. Now, he built a pretty substantial business, and he actually went to Blockbuster in the year 2000 with an offer to sell the business to Blockbuster. And the monetary value of the sale.
So should we let them guess, or are you going to
Does anybody know how much they wanted for Netflix in the year 2000? They were trying to sell this to Blockbuster. It wasn't £1. No, close. I mean, it was making a loss, so it probably should have been sold for £1. But no, it was actually only $50 million. And this was at a time where Blockbuster were worth about $4.5 billion. So it was, quite an easy acquisition should they have gone ahead. But actually what happened was the CEO of Blockbuster laughed them out of the room, said that it was a fad, it was ridiculous technology, no one's ever going to adopt this, and
Someone did.
And somebody, Netflix and Phil, somebody did. The year after that, Viacom actually holds a public IPO for Blockbuster. Now, Viacom, if you remember, bought Blockbuster for $8.4 billion, and they registered the IPO at a valuation of 4.8, so almost half of what the acquisition was.
Good or bad business?
Pretty terrible. In the year 2002, Blockbuster posts a $1.6 billion loss as the DVD market climbs and VHS market starts to sink. An interesting thing, at the time, Blockbuster, then desperately trying to catch up with Netflix, decided that they'd launch their own DVD delivery system. And they tried to compete. They came a close second. But Reed Hastings, who was the CEO of Netflix and the founder at the time, he said that the battle with Blockbuster that year had been particularly difficult, and they'd thrown absolutely everything at them, bar the kitchen sink. And quite facetiously, the CEO of Blockbuster sent to Reed Hastings' home address a boxed kitchen sink.
This very sink.
This very sink. But actually, the story for Netflix kind of it gets a lot better from there. 2002, they posted a $1.6 billion loss. That's Blockbuster. 2003, Netflix posts their first profit of $6.5 million. And then eventually, running all the way through to 2010, Blockbuster posted their final loss of $1.1 billion with a total valuation of just $24 million. And they closed their doors in 2010. And Netflix, as we probably all know, is now a gigantic company in the space.
Ready to be disrupted, no doubt.
Ready to be disrupted, we think. So yes, that's the very interesting story, I think, of Blockbuster versus Netflix. And it's just a really key example of a company that probably shouldn't have ignored disruptive technology. And this is kind of the point of what we're talking about today, is that this is a lesson which we've learned. Blockchain, I think, is probably akin to DVD was in...
Yeah. I think
98.
even more so, for me, I think blockchain is the greatest innovation since the start of the internet, really, on consumer, on mass scale. And there's going to be loads of examples of Blockbuster that are going to be happening over the next few years. Maybe it'll be Netflix. I mean, we've got companies like TV2 that are coming out. Yeah, definitely. They're looking at a blockchain solution to disrupt the way that we consume videos, and you're paid to watch TV in their own native token, and that's going to be really exciting. We've got Taihuttu as well, which historically raised, I think, was it
astronomical sum of money.
$500 million.
Yeah, I mean,
dollars in an
not
ICO.
to get into the debate of ICOs, but I think that's
we're not doing ICOs just yet.
Too much. Yeah.
So it's going to be really interesting to see who the casualties are. And what we've always said is that if there is a large business out there, a Netflix, why aren't they setting up a little squad, a side project, to actually try and put themselves out of business themselves? Because you're better to have someone, you better put yourself out of business than someone else do it for you.
Yep, absolutely right.
All right. So we've spoken about this example, and
yes, what is a pivot?
Can anyone sort of shed some light on what they think a pivot might be in a business, or an example of that? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the key thing with a pivot is, specifically for tech businesses actually, is if you are on a very clear trajectory and all of a sudden a new tech comes into the space, something which could improve or enhance your product offering for your customer, it's about making the decision to almost turn the ship and start moving in that direction, which again, going back to the Blockbuster example, is something which they didn't really do.
I think the really interesting thing about pivoting is, if we use the ship analogy, is that the bigger the ship, the more difficult and slower it is to turn and move direction.
Sure.
But when you're a little dinghy, meaning a startup or something, it means you can be nimble and you can move and you can change direction. So I think it is very hard for existing large businesses to change and adapt. And it's also a fear factor for them as well, because the CEO or the board have got to say, right, we're going to take this direction. And that can actually be quite scary as well. So any businesses out there, I think you should just be looking at this and assessing what you can do.
Absolutely.
So there's many sectors, and we'll go on to some of the examples of good sectors and good business opportunities to use blockchain in a moment. But there's also some really
bad examples,
awful reasons to use blockchain and maybe create your own token or cryptocurrency. And boy, don't we know it.
Well, we have projects come to us daily. Some of them are good, and some of them are terrible.
And it's becoming more difficult to find really amazing projects that we think that are going to be hugely successful.
Yeah, I think the lesson that we learned is that blockchain isn't exactly as Samson Williams, who came on the podcast, said. He said blockchain is not hot sauce. You can't put it on everything. And we had one project come to us, which, believe it or not, was a donkey sanctuary that had decided to launch their own donkey sanctuary coin.
So has anyone invested in Donkey Coin? Or?
No. Well, we lost our shirt on that investment.
So it's just me on that. Okay, well, I just thought they were, quite cute. And I really wanted to have that. There's nothing wrong with the donkey sanctuary.
Nothing wrong with the donkey sanctuary.
But do they need a token? What are they trying to do? Why are they using distributed ledger technology?
Sure.
What's the purpose of the token? What problem does it solve?
Yeah.
And it doesn't really. So you don't want to apply it to absolutely everything. No. And there's been some quite interesting cryptocurrencies that are quite well known out there. Do we have any Ripple fans here at all? No? Okay.
No? All right. Say no more.
Silence.
Yeah, say no more.
So we come across lots of different projects, and we have some key markers for things that we look at, which really is what the problem that's trying to be solved, and how they're implementing the blockchain technology, what the tokens are going to be used for. I know, John, in the last talk, you spoke about tokens that don't have a utility, and I was sat there thinking, oh my God, yes, there are so many projects that don't necessarily have a utility, and it's fine to have a utility token. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, we've seen some really good projects that have a utility token, and the utility value of that is pegged to a certain amount to be used on the platform. Which is fine, but obviously security tokens where you can take equity in a business as well are out there too. So just some of the things you do.
Sure.
That
does say
this
blockchain.
says blockchain
It
at the
does say
bottom.
blockchain.
So we took some advice from this guy.
Yeah. Good reasons to pivot into blockchain. Yeah, he was very confident, wasn't he? Yeah, I think the thing for us is if a business is pivoting into blockchain, it's got to have a reason to do so. So we look at some of the bad examples that we talk about, Donkey Sanctuary coin. There's just no need for a token. And actually, blockchain does a lot more than just exchanging value. It's a distributed ledger, and the technology actually can be used for a number of different things. And actually, we've got some examples, I think, haven't we, of some of the sectors which we think specifically are going to be affected by blockchain technology.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe you want to talk about your industry. So for those who don't know, this chap here, he has built a really interesting business in the music sector. You were looking at how blockchain technology can improve that sector in some way.
Yeah, sure. I work in the music sector. That's kind of my day-to-day job. But yeah, I think music is one of the spaces where blockchain technology is fundamentally needed. There's a lot of issues with getting royalties paid to musicians, and also transparency in where music is being played and how musicians are being compensated. And blockchain technology, by kind of opening it up as a distributed ledger with information that's accessible by everyone that's part of that ecosystem, is a really huge benefit to not just musicians, but also to the record labels that work in that space. And that's just one use of blockchain in music. I mean, there's numerous others, from streaming and service delivery. I think it's probably a couple of years away. Music traditionally has been quite slow to adopt new technologies. The labels have been running quite fast to get on board with streaming. But
well, we've seen the first record label that's been brought out on the blockchain. Hunter Court Records have got an ecosystem that they've developed, and they've actually already signed some pretty well-known artists as well on that. So that's going to be something really exciting. So we think the music industry in particular, but we've got loads of others. So charities is one.
So needed. Yeah. Exactly.
It's so needed. When you donate your money, who here donates to charity on a regular basis? So how many of you know actually how much of that money goes to the cause?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a very small amount. Yeah, I mean, administration costs are huge.
Yeah.
And you never quite know that it's solving the problem that
we've
it's supposed
seen some
to be.
horrific examples on the news, certainly this year.
Very recently.
Where money that's been given to charities, to centralised organisations, hasn't been used correctly.
Yeah.
One of the really exciting things that I think blockchain can do is to use smart contracts to actually send money directly to projects and remove a lot of this bloat. I mean, some of the bloat in these organisations is huge. They have enormous staffing costs, and believe me, I haven't got a problem with charities paying staff. But when I won't name the charity, but I give a reasonable amount each month to them, and every other month I get a letter or a phone call or more marketing to say, will you donate more? And it's really inefficient and very expensive. And I can't really find out how much of that money goes to the cause that I want to support. So blockchain can do that through smart contracts. We've seen a few charities. We've actually had one on the podcast that's trying to do something for the homeless. So we'll see how that project goes. So there's loads of things it can do there.
Yeah.
Shipping, logistics, supply chain. We've actually
huge
had
use case.
Yeah, we've had a
huge use case.
A number of different projects on the podcast with logistics and supply chain, where they can actually monitor and track items and remove a lot of inefficiencies as well. So it's very exciting.
I also think it's important to say that although there's a lot of use cases for blockchain technology, actually a lot of the businesses that we see utilizing blockchain have never been in business before. I mean, they're really coming into business for the first time using blockchain technology, and actually are still restricted by the same boundaries as most startups. And I think it's a little bit similar to the dot-com boom in that a lot of these blockchain companies will probably not succeed. And it's probably going to be the innovators that have business experience that will do well with it.
Yeah, and if, again, not investment advice, but if you're looking at good projects that you may want to buy tokens in, one of the things that Ben and I do for our own, we have a joint crypto fund, is we look at the founders of the business, what their experience is.
If they have any experience.
And quite often they don't. You know, they're potentially quite young or inexperienced, haven't run a business before, and they're trying to disrupt, you know, a multi-million, or sometimes we've had hundreds of billion industry, and they've had no experience in that sector and no credible business experience behind them. So for us, that's a potential red flag. And I know there's always these anecdotal examples of, you know, your Mark Zuckerbergs and the Larry and Google guys.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and Jeff,
Uncle Jeff,
Uncle
as you
Jeff.
call him. Yeah, Jeff Bezos. But you know, they are absolute standouts. So we want to actually see who's behind the business. And some of these logistics and supply chain projects, as we've spoken with, actually have a business already, but they recognise the problems, and they've built another business on the side to say, okay, well, maybe my business here does have a lifespan. Well, I can build the life raft, and I can move over and pivot and change into a blockchain focused business. Another one is health records as well, which I think is...
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge problem in the US, especially with private healthcare.
Sure, yeah, I think it's definitely a bigger problem. But, I mean, I don't know where my NHS records are. I've moved around the country. I've lived overseas for a short amount of time as well. And I'm very skeptical that all my medical records are up to date. And they're my records. They should come with me.
Yeah.
But instead, they're on some NHS database somewhere.
Sure.
And I can't really access them when I want to. I can request it, but I can't go there now. And who's to say that the records are up to date and correct?
Secure. I think this is another important thing with the use case of blockchain is data sovereignty. And I think there are certain aspects of data in our day-to-day lives that we take for granted. And I think healthcare data is one of those. And I think that we need to take ownership of that information and at least know where it is.
Definitely. So for us as entrepreneurs, this is a really exciting time. I feel like I've been given an opportunity that I was too young to have during the dot-com boom. I think that Ben and I have got an exciting project that we're working on together called Cosound, which will perhaps tell you if we come back to one of the events or another event, we'll go into a bit more detail about then. But for me, this is a tool. It's a tool for good, and it's a tool for change.
Hi, thanks for the warm welcome. We are Dutch, so my English accent isn't as beautiful as all the other speakers you have heard today. It's rather crappy a little bit. But I will introduce my family. This is my beautiful daughter, Jolie. She's 13 years old. She just went 13. Juna, she's 11. Jessa, she's 8. And my beautiful wife, Romain. Just want to have an applause for them. They supported me through all this amazing Bitcoin journey we have been doing, trading. Oh, she had to sell all her shoes. It was 70 pair. She sold her toys, her bike, their quad. They sold all the luxury stuff they had. We had been spoiling my family a lot. They had everything they needed. And we just wanted to teach them a new life lesson about minimalism and being happy without having a lot of money. So thanks. Daddy's up to it again alone, and I need to work. You can enjoy, go shopping, Victoria's Secret, or... So again, my name is Didi Taihuttu. We are bound to the Bitcoin family. Welcome for here. The story I'm going to tell you is just a story about my life. I'm always speaking at those events, and people always ask me, what are you going to tell them? And I've been figuring out myself, what can I tell them? I will tell you my life. I will tell you how I got into crypto, why we went all in, why my wife accepted this crazy idea of going all in, and my opinion about cryptocurrency and about Bitcoin Private, and all the other cryptos around in the world. So it all started back in 2002. This is my beautiful mother, and I was at that point 24 years in my life. I was eating dinner at home with my mother, and every Wednesday we're having this family dinner. My brother, my sister, my mother, my father, and she cooked and we ate. At the end of this dinner, we hugged and said, hey, see you tomorrow again, Mom. Bye, see you tomorrow. At 1:30 in the night, my brother called me, and he was Didi. My mom stopped breathing. And I could hear his voice that it was really serious. So I threw away the telephone, stepped into my car, raced to my father. The ambulance was already there. I walked into my father and he was like, Didi, she's gone, she's gone. And I'm like, why she's gone? They are still getting her back. They are helping her. And I went up to my mother there and she was on the ground in the kitchen. And then they told me she fell down and she was gone. She was in coma for 7 days. And after those 7 days, she died, 48 years old. So at these points in your life, you always have this same question. What do I want from life? Do I want to continue my life? I just lost my mother. Do I want to jump off the bridge? Do I want to take care of my brother, my sister? Do I need to help my father? What do I need to do? For me, this answer on this question was simple. I started working. I became a workaholic. I started working that much that I built up a company. At the end, we had 16 employees. Everything was going fine. I built up the second company. We had 12 employees there as well. Then I thought, man, I'm almost at the top of the world. I started mining because there was a guy telling me about Bitcoin, and I was like, Bitcoin? This was in around 2012. So my company had been involved with a big company, a big office building and everything, and I had some empty spaces. And this guy was telling me about, hey, did you hear about Bitcoin? And I was not, no, tell me. It's a revolution. We are going to change the world. We are going to disrupt the system. And I was like, okay, this sounds fine to me. So can we make money with it? Because I wanted to be a millionaire, a very young millionaire. That was my goal in life, becoming a millionaire. And what happened is that I started mining Bitcoin, and when the first crash came from $1,200 to $200, I started mining Dogecoin. I loved Dogecoin. Millions of them. I thought that was everybody told me, Didi, Dogecoin will go to 10 cents. So I'm like, okay, so I had 30 million Dogecoins, 10 cents, yeah, I will be fine. But then the crash came and I sold my mining rigs, I sold everything. And I just started focusing on my company again. But I got bored. 2 companies, doing it for a long time. I needed something new. I took a third job. I became an affiliate manager and afterwards a brand manager for online casino business in Malta. I had to travel a lot. I saw all the big clubs in the world. London was my favorite district, it was called. I was really on top of the world. I was making pictures with the Bentleys and I had my 6 Belvedere bottles. I thought this was the goal in life. I succeeded. In my opinion, I succeeded. But then it was 2014, end of the year, Christmas. My father called me and he said, Didi, are you sitting? I said, yeah, I'm driving my car. What's up, Dad? I just came from the hospital. I have just 1 year to live. I have cancer. I said, what? Again, in my car, racing home, hugging my dad, crying a lot. It's not true. You cannot just go in 1 year. We have to go to another hospital, and we have to research, and we did. But finally, we found out that the type of cancer he had was not treatable. We could extend his life a little bit with 1 year, and so we did. So I enjoyed this year with my father. 2015, I stopped working, I stopped my companies, I hired a manager to take care of all these things, and I just focused on my father, my brother, my sister, my family. We did our last holiday, our last Christmas. You know, all those things you want to do with your father if you know that you are going to die. My father was different. He was a professional football player, and he was the type of guy who was not, I'm a trainer now, and I will train till I die. I'm going to be on this field till I die. But I wanted to have all this time together with my father. And he was like, no, I'm going to die, but I need to spend this time the way I like it. My passion, football. So there are a lot of conflicts in this year, but there was a lot of beautiful times as well. Then, 2016, January, I woke up, I brought him some coffee, and he started to have breathing problems again. He died. I was next to him. He died, he was 61 years old. I at that point was 38. I started thinking, again, shit, what do I want from life? Again on the same point. I have everything I want. I can buy anything I want, but I couldn't save my father. If I would have been a billionaire, I wouldn't have saved my father. And then something struck me, Didi, you're enjoying life, but it's a one-man show, but you're a family man. Where is your family in this show? I wanted to spend more time with my kids. Till that point, My oldest daughter was 10. I hadn't even seen her grow up. It was just working, working, money, blah. So I changed. So then what happened is, okay, this time I will make the good decision. I will sell my company. I sold my company direct. And after selling my company and the other company and quitting my management job and everything, of course, the nicest thing in my life happened. I got a burnout, because if you're used to working a lot of high-level energy, then you fall down and you're empty. Brushing my teeth was like the highest energy point in my life. At that point, it was like I couldn't do anything. I was like this series junk in the mornings, watching these Netflix shows till at 1 or 2 the kids came home, and I was still watching this same series. So then I just thought, okay, now I have to change. I have to really change my life. And we sold everything, so we had some money. So I decided to start traveling. So Asia, here we come. I told my wife, let's take backpacks, go to Asia, just take a time off. I need to reset, you know. The burnout was the craziest things. What happened to me was I was driving in my car during this time. I didn't know it was a burnout, and my heart started like, oh, this pressure on my chest. It was like, it was hurting. So I had to pull over the car, and I had to give my telephone to one of the kids. When if something happens, just dial 112. In Holland, you dial 112. So this was like a strange situation. I still didn't believe it was a burnout. I went home, I told my wife, and she was like, Didi, you have to go to a doctor. And I still was like, no, man, it's just it will go over. But Monday, it happened again. I went to the doctor, and he said, Didi, you need to relax. So that is what I did. I went to Asia. We were relaxing. I was enjoying the beautiful beach. I loved my hammock. I spent hours thinking in that hammock, what will I do with my life? The question I needed to answer for myself, but also for my family, and also for other people in the world. Because I discovered that a lot of people are walking with the same question. Is this everything? Is there anything? Is there more? Blah, blah. So I needed to figure this out. And then I came to me. Minimalism versus the rat race cycle. Am I still going to work, get a lot of income, pay the bills, fancy lifestyle, no savings, debit loans, working harder again? Am I going to continue this cycle, or am I going to choose to be happy with what we have? And during this holiday, we discovered that we were very happy with just 2 backpacks. Nothing luxury. Yeah, my iPhone was the most luxury item we had. And we were enjoying life to the fullest. I was enjoying my kids running on the beach. They were learning so much, and I enjoyed it. And I would have never expected from me to enjoy something little like that. I thought enjoying was being the District London on this bar. But then I started to realize this is enjoying life. So I started to talk with my wife, and finally we said, let's go all in. She said, but how can you as a materialistic man go all in? And I said, we just need to. All in crypto at that point. Of course, at first it's a discussion with your wife. All in, what is all in, Didi? So yeah, all in is all in. So cars, everything, house, you have to prove it. That was the answer. I said, okay. I took my Jeep Cherokee, put it online for sale, sold it in January, bought Bitcoins. Second car, sold it, bought Bitcoins. Motorcycle, sold it, bought Bitcoins. And then eventually she started believing me, okay, he really wants to change life. She was always the Zen factor in our family. She was always, be normal, then you're weird enough. Be normal, then you're crazy enough. I think it's in English, yeah, isn't it? Yeah. So she helped me adapting this new lifestyle. Being happy with flip-flops. I don't have any fancy shoes anymore, sorry. This is the first time in 8 months I wear jeans. This is a special event for me. But we went all in. So we went all in. We sold our house. We flew back from Bali to the Netherlands. I went to a real estate broker and said, I want to sell my house. And yeah, it's okay, he said, but I want to sell it for Bitcoins. And then this system started. Bitcoins? You cannot sell a house for what are Bitcoins? You cannot sell for Bitcoins, but how are we going to do with the notary? How are we going to do with your finances at the bank? And I started, let's try it. Let's shake up this business, do it, and let's see what happens after. And if it happens after, I will handle it after. And that's what we did. And that worked. Why did we go all in? to be very clear, we didn't go in for Lambos and for mooning. Not at all. For me, it was a life change. It was not to become this millionaire, but a life change. And we thought the world needed a change. You know, I love the revolution part, but also an evolution. So, you know, we already saw in the presentation from stones to gold to this cash money, to this cards, to PayPal, to Bitcoin Cash, private, sorry. So we really believe this is going to happen. And we believed this very strongly 2 years ago already. And that's why we went all in. We just wanted to change life. And with this bag of money, we couldn't do anything. The banks weren't giving me any interest anymore, so I didn't have any lust of putting my money to those guys. So we chose for crypto. For us, the reasons to invest in Bitcoin and not all other crypto are freedom, financial independency, transparent, decentralized processes, trust. Trust is very important. Privacy, because there will be a huge shift of trust. It's, I think, the biggest shift in history of trust. People having to trust each other again instead of having to trust a third party. So there will be a lot of things happening in the world outside of crypto that will change the world as well. Privacy, and of course to kick some ass. We just wanted to disrupt the current unfair, in our opinion, unfair monetary system. We wanted to be the monetary system should belong to everybody. Everybody should be able to have a bank account. Everybody has to be able to send money to the family where they are on the world without high fees. People need to know that there is not enough cash money in the world to cash out. If we all cash out, I think it's 3% tomorrow, there isn't enough cash money out of this ATM machine. There isn't. So this is not right. This has to change. So that's why. So, and then, of course, the media got a little bit sense of it, and they were like, this is a strange family. They are selling their house. They are going to live on a campsite and offer Bitcoin. Something is, we don't even know what it is. So they bombed us to the Bitcoin family. And we had to think about this. Are we going to accept this role? Bitcoin family, what does it even mean? Don't they want to make a brand? People were writing me fan mail. They were writing me all strange of things. And we were like living in a campsite, like doing nothing, just waiting for the crypto boom. But it became more and more and more. And people started asking questions. And how do you do it with education of the kids? And how do you do this? And how do you travel all the life? And how do you pay with crypto? This was a big trip for us. 2 years ago, we couldn't pay with crypto. We needed to exchange crypto back to money on a bank and pay with money again. Now, yesterday I visited Wirex, for example. I just transferred with my app. It takes 2 seconds, and I pay with my Wirex card everywhere in the world. This is a step in between, of course. At the end, I hope that every store in London and all over the world will accept crypto. Just paying with my Bitcoin wallet or whatever. So, but we became the Bitcoin family, and why did we do it? Because we could have easily gone sitting on this beach the rest of our life, sipping my cocktails, coconuts, and just do nothing and be happy till we die. But 38, at that point 40 years old, I thought, nah, maybe a little bit too young to not support this amazing revolution that's going on, so let's go. Let's try it. Let's give it a try. Again, a discussion with the wife, are we going to do it? Are we going to be this brand? And to be honest, it goes with ups and downs. It's not easy to be a Bitcoin family because you get a lot of negativism about on you, positive people as well, but hate mails, everything. So in becoming this Bitcoin family, we were in Thailand at that point, and there was a show that called Arte, and they were making a documentary about us, so we said, oh, let's do it. We said yes to everything, because we thought in life, to change life, you need to start saying yes. We always said no. And now we started thinking, okay, let's say yes. Let's open those doors, walk through the door, see what is there. Do we like it? I will stay. I don't like it, I will go back, close this door. People are always afraid that if they go through this door, and if they want to go back, there is nothing left. There's always something. And if not, you go to the left or to the right again. It's very easy to live your life. So we became the Bitcoin family, and then in Thailand we had some documentaries, and then some companies started calling us, oh, do you want to do a tour in Europe? I said, okay, let's do a tour in Europe. So they ordered us a camper van. It was sponsored by a few companies on here, and they told us, do this European tour and start talking about Bitcoin to people and everything. So we visited a lot of beautiful places, making pictures with my Bitcoin hats, of course, trying to convince people that Bitcoin is normal, that Bitcoin is going mainstream, slowly going mainstream, but it's going to be accepted everywhere. And I'm going there. I'm going to all the small places and check them. I went into the silver mines and teach my kids, okay, what is the difference between silver, gold, and Bitcoins? I fought the bears in Norway. It was a real hard fight. I went to the top when Bitcoin dropped below 6,000. I thought I'll just climb the hill and just vlog that I'm on top again, and Bitcoin will be at top soon as well. So all these things, Bitcoin shops, paying in bars with Bitcoins, we are trying to vlog about them and just educate people, because this is really important now, educating people that Bitcoin and crypto is going to be the next step in the evolution of money. And I like to prepare people that I like to have people not miss out this boom, which they already missed out in the dot-com bubble that time. So we were in a lot of newspapers, television shows, just to give you a small view from what our kids and family went through. We were invited to these television shows, and the kids were bombed in those television shows. They were asked questions like, why don't you go to school? Because they are now homeschooled, unschooled. I'm preparing them for a very decentral future, not for a future where the normal schools are preparing the kids at this point. Different discussion, but there's an English guy who has a very beautiful view about it, and we just wrote a book, and he's in the book as well. Ken Robinson is his name, and just check him on Google, and you will never send your kids to school again. There was made a documentary by Arte. It was viewed more than 1 million times. I met a president. There was the president of Liberland. Have you heard of Liberland? We know him. You know Liberland? Yeah. Okay. We are libertarians. You're libertarians as well. So yeah, for those who don't know Liberland, it's the guy behind this silly cartoon people made of me. I'm becoming a Bitcoin superhero or something. But this guy, Liberland, he's creating this country between Serbia and Bosnia, I think. And it's a small country, but it's liberty. You can get a passport and everything, no taxes, no school system, no nothing, but it wants to set people free that are digital nomads, people traveling on the world. Check them, Liberland, it's really cool. So yeah, then there was a guy sending me this cartoon. Didi, you're out your suit, you're coming out the closet again. No, sorry. And then I became an ICO advisor, and everything became more and more. It started to become a job again. I became advisor for a lot of companies: Dcoin, Deep Arrow, Decent Bet, Money Token, Bitcoin Private, GIF, and all those companies want the same. They want to support crypto. They want to support crypto going mainstream. I don't understand all the discussions nowadays. If I tweet something about Bitcoin Private, the Verge community is positive, but all the other communities are like, well, how can you shill Bitcoin Private? How can you shill Verge? How can you shill this? It's not about chilling. This whole community, this whole crypto has not been born because of hate. It has born because of love, because of becoming a community, sharing one coin, being strong together. This is where crypto is about, not about fighting Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin. I don't understand this fight. I think it's pre-planned, because else I cannot understand this fight. But okay, so I think people have to bring more positive energy in it, so that new people that see the Twitters and that see the Facebook and see all those messages will think, okay, it's a safe environment, it's a normal environment, it's not a childish environment where people throw mud all the time at each other, because people won't step in this business. It won't go mainstream if we just keep fighting about who has the beautiful color and who's the best company. They are all different, not better, not worse, different, but they all support crypto, and that's what you need to understand. Of course, not the scam companies, there are a lot, but in general, the most crypto companies want to support it. So then there was a company, are you going to write a book? Of course, I will do some more work. I will start writing a book, and I started writing a book. The book will also be out in English. I think it's from the 1st of September. It will be in English and German. It's just about our life, but also about how to trade crypto and what is crypto, what is blockchain, just educating people again. I'm talking a lot about things I'm doing to make money again. Well, I swore to myself I wouldn't do it again, but this time is different. I'm making this money to share it. Of all and everything we earn, 50% goes to foundation, crypto education, but I will bring it there myself because I don't trust all these charity companies yet. Till there is one company that makes a really beautiful blockchain charity product. So I will travel there and I will give the money to this school or to Bali, for instance, now where there's a lot of problems. I will fly there. If I collect 5,000 euros and I fly there for 500 euros, they still have 4,500 euros left. I think this is more than if I send it there to a company that starts to pay people again, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's a good idea for the next product, maybe. So this is how we became the Bitcoin family. For me, it's very easy. The secret of happiness is freedom. The secret of freedom is courage. People do not live in fear. Just live. Just try something new every day. Just do it. Just go for it. Nothing will happen. You will not die. You will die if you don't do this. You will get stressed and you will get diseases about it. Just try to live life. So, and referring to my father and mother who showed me how to travel, I'm the small guy there on my father's shoulder. My father always and my mother always said, dare to live life. So I think now that I understand what they meant with dare to live life. And I will share this knowledge again with my kids, but also with you guys, everywhere where I can. Dare to live life. Man, I just heard a talk here of our two guys doing a crypto show. I can imagine if you start doing this show, you're like, how will people think about me on this YouTube? How will they react? What will they do? What will they say? Will they be negative? Will they be positive? Can I still walk outside if they are very positive? Just do it and see after. You cannot predict the future. You cannot change the past. Just do it and try it and stop it if you don't like it anymore. It's easy. It's very easy. So if you want to support us in supporting other companies and people that are needing, you can visit our Facebook or Instagram. It's all called the Bitcoin family. You can also mail me. You can also donate BTC if you want, Bitcoins. Is it scannable from this distance? No. But there are many options. You can find on our website as well that everything we receive and we bring to other people, we will start vlogging about it. So you won't find me on Instagram vlogging about my new Lamborghini or whatever. You will find me vlogging about the money I will bring to these causes. And I think that we as a family find that as a goal in our life. Sticky. So if we get money, we will bring it there and we will share it with you through YouTube. I prefer DLive or DTube because they are decentralized, or Steam it, for example. But that is what our family is now at this point.
So most of the times is what I look like, developing. Sometimes I hold my keyboard that way. Depends on how my day's going. If it's going really bad, I tend to look like this, especially when a bug or issue crops up, such as things not working. But usually you end up fixing the bug and you end up feeling like a rock star, ninja, guru developer, all the horrible industry terms all mashed up into one. But no matter whether it's going well or bad, the most important thing is to keep calm and code on. Keep developing things, working out problems, maybe step away from the computer, you'll figure it out, come back and code awesome solutions. So that's kind of what I do. I've done that for maybe 20 years now. I was a developer that started off in the dot-com boom, the bubble, if you like, that was in the 90s. So I was producing solutions for small companies and sort of worked my way up to big global companies, blue chips, multinationals, organizations, governments around the world. I've worked for many governments too. And over the last 20 years, I've produced probably an estimated 500 solutions, websites, web apps, etc., for maybe 300-400 different clients. This probably looks quite complicated, because it is. There's a lot to know, and it's always changing. It's difficult to keep up to date, but that's what I like as a developer, is developing and keeping up to date with solutions and building things for people who have got ideas. So being a web developer, building up a small pot of money, I wanted to invest in something. It suited me and my inner nerd nature to look at, how can I invest in something and be in control of it? And started to hear more and more about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And I actually started really to look into Bitcoin about here, which is about May last year, so May 2017. So I kind of missed this whole period of what happened before, people producing solutions and the nerds and the geeks who were really into the crypto side and the cypherpunks who produced these amazing solutions. I kind of joined it for the right reason, for gaining investment. Looking back now, we can see, and you probably are quite familiar with this chart, for many years, it didn't really go anywhere. People kind of traded between themselves. The value didn't go up too much. And we saw it just about the time that I joined in May and got involved in cryptocurrency. There's this big sweep upwards in value. And that kind of, I didn't anticipate that was going to happen, but I got into it then. I got into trading. I discovered I'm quite a bad trader. I've put my money into things, and I've made a little bit of money here, lost a lot there. Overall, I'm probably slightly up, maybe break even. But I've learned a lot about myself, and I shouldn't probably day trade. So I'm more of a hodler now, if you like. So the early phase, looking back at the chart now, we can think of it in a few different phases. The phase over there with the guy with the big beard is kind of what I think is the nerdy phase, the real nerds that sit in front of the computer, come up with ideas. Days on end, they'll be coding away, coming up with secure solutions. They're the kind of innovators of Bitcoin. Then we head into a new phase with the hipsters, the people who are in it for profit, the early adopters, the entrepreneurs, the people who can spot real business opportunity. But still, nothing happens for many, many years. I joined in this kind of monetary phase, which we're probably all quite aware of. I think when I joined and got into Bitcoin, Bitcoin was about $800. And we saw this big sweep upwards towards Christmas and December, and it went to almost $20,000. So this was a huge uprise. And of course, everybody was thinking, well, that's going to continue. Next year it's going to keep going up, and this is the future. And it indeed is the future, but we didn't anticipate it going down and down, and us all having this bear market, whether you're in Bitcoin or altcoins. There's been this big bear downtrend for months on end. So I'm going to use the laser. This is the monetary period I kind of entered into, and I believed, like a lot of people, it's going to keep going up, and this was the future. Fiat would be dead in a couple of years. We know that's not quite the case, and it might run side by side, as John said earlier. So we head into a new phase. This confused a lot of people. Why is Bitcoin gone up to 20 grand and then it started coming down and down? Surely it must go up. We've seen a few periods where it sort of swept upwards. We thought, this is the future again, and it sort of came down again. So it's left a lot of people confused. Why did we go up to 20,000, and why have we sunk back down? Why is it not going anywhere? And it started to dawn on me, well, what is cryptocurrency? And I looked into the technology, like a lot of people. Which coins have got which technology, which are offering which features do they have? And it occurred to me, I think February, May time, that people were concentrating a lot on the crypto word. But they weren't concentrating enough on the second word, currency. It needs to have both the technology and the usage as well. You can't just have fantastic technology that no one uses. It doesn't make any sense. So I read Satoshi Nakamoto's white paper on Bitcoin. Can we have a show of hands to see how many people have actually read this in the room? Be honest. About half of you, that's quite good. So for those that don't know, it's an 8-page document that describes a revolutionary new form of money that would be decentralized. People could trade between themselves. You don't need a middleman. Transaction costs would be lower. And best of all, it would be fraud-proof. Because the public ledger is out there, people can see the transactions that have happened. So again, going back to the cryptocurrency word, and people forgetting the currency part. If we look at the very heading we've got within Satoshi's white paper, Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. People keep forgetting about the cash system bit. They concentrate on the fantastic technology, and we've got so much great technology, but we need usage. So it started to occur to me that the average person, this guy who's a baker, he is unable to sell his bread for cryptocurrency. He has to accept cash or card because that's a de facto standard. And that's okay, but Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, as we have heard from our speakers, have got a lot of advantages that debit cards, credit cards, and indeed cash don't have. There's a lot of fraud with those. It's easy to trick. It's a centralized system. It's controlled by governments and fewer parties than we'd like. So there weren't enough merchant services for this guy, the baker, to sell his bread for cryptocurrency. Similarly, this looks like a lot of people who have invested in cryptocurrencies and they've gone down and down. He's put his money into this thinking it was going to keep going upwards. It's not. His money is now stuck in cryptocurrency. So this is not a good solution. It's not a good scenario. We have the baker who can't sell for cryptocurrency because there are no services. And we have the user who doesn't want to spend it because it's less than perhaps he paid for it. So it would be a waste of money. But it all comes back to there being not enough mainstream services. If there were services available for businesses to be able to sell with cryptocurrencies, new people would get on board. New people would be interested. The value would go up. And it would be a cycle of businesses selling and customers buying. This is the way the world works, especially regarding business. A great analogy is the can you buy a cup of coffee with cryptocurrency scenario. I'm not sure if you've all heard of this, but there's a couple of real problems, and it's a great way to illustrate whether a cryptocurrency is useful. A couple of the problems faced by it are, okay, let's buy it with, say, Bitcoin. Let's say the shop accepts Bitcoin, but they don't want to give you the cup of coffee until they've accepted payment, and that's confirmed in their bank. Bitcoin, you may not know, has 10-minute block times. So unlike a credit card or debit card or even cash where you pay for it and it's done within a couple of seconds, you might have to wait 10 minutes for a transaction to go through. If the merchant is pretty tight, they would say, well, no, you cannot have your coffee until I've received my payment. So let's say they wait for the payment to go through, it's accepted, the merchant then says, here you go, you can have your coffee now, in which case the customer says, well, it's cold, I don't want it anymore. The other major issue faced by it is the cup of coffee might be $2 or $3. We've seen in the past that Bitcoin under network stress, the transaction costs can go way up, and it might be a few dollars. The merchant is not going to pay more in transaction costs than they would to take the money from a customer for a cup of coffee. It would be ridiculous. You don't want higher transaction costs than you've got for the product itself. So it was about this time, sort of March, April, that I really discovered Bitcoin Private and some of the advantages it's got over Bitcoin. For instance, it's got quicker block times. Instead of 10 minutes, it's 2.5 minutes. The network itself is quieter, so the transaction costs are a fraction of a cent compared to Bitcoin, which is much more active. They do certainly cost more. But the best part about it is the private part. Now, people in their everyday life, they don't want to necessarily show the transactions and things they've bought and sold for. We're not doing anything wrong, but you wouldn't show everybody your bank statement. And that really is what happens with Bitcoin. It's a public ledger. The information's all out there. Everybody can see what someone's bought and sold. And did you know, for instance, 30% of the Bitcoin transactions can be unraveled. You can find out who bought and sold and to who. You know, there's software out there where you can unravel the transactions. I mean, that doesn't sound good, does it? You know, a good portion can be snooped upon. You can find out who's bought and sold. Again, you're not necessarily doing anything wrong, just don't want to tell the world. So Bitcoin, Bitcoin Private, for those that don't know, is using the Bitcoin code base. We have Z Classic, which is the best privacy technology you can pretty much get. It's called ZK Snarks, and it's a method of encryption that I will put my hands up. I don't totally understand how it works, but it's absolutely fantastic. The buyer and the seller do not know of each other. There is this air gap between. So it's got amazing technology where you can buy and sell, and transactions happen between buyer and seller, but there is no link. It's impossible to actually unravel who is bought and sold and from who and for what. It was about this time that we started to think, well, this is amazing technology. I prefer this to Bitcoin. What can we do with this to get the baker or indeed other merchants using it? So we started to come up with the idea of a widget that would appear on people's websites. You could click on this, And as per some of the previous solutions, it would show the QR code and the address so you could make a payment for something. And this is one of the lovely videos that someone from our community put together. We have a fantastic community of people who get involved in the development and the marketing side. So we thought, okay, this is great. Let's try and make a widget we can put into people's websites that will enable them to take Bitcoin private easily. So I came up with this plan. I spoke to a lot of the blockchain developers, and they told me this was a bit too complicated. But we started to really think about, well, how could this work? How could we provide an easy-to-use solution for merchants so they could start selling and take Bitcoin private that will encourage the users to use it, and the cycle keeps continuing. I want to produce solutions using my skills to try and help bring this into mainstream adoption. So speaking with some of the blockchain developers, and we have fantastically smart blockchain developers that I work with, I learned a whole lot, and we came up with a much simpler approach. And the way it works is this. We have a full node server, that's the black thing on the left, and that really runs the blockchain. It looks for transactions coming through. It runs the chain, much like the nodes in the decentralized nature of cryptocurrencies. So it's looking for transactions currently, and we built a bit of web tech on this to look for transactions happening and inform something when it does happen. We built a widget too, so with a little bit of JavaScript, anybody could insert this into their website. So the people who aren't aware of technology, it's dead simple. You can copy some code, paste it into your website, and you're able to have a widget. That widget does all the hard work of working out if a transaction has gone through or not. So the customer is able to buy using Bitcoin private using a widget. The merchant's life is nice and easy too because it's easy to integrate, and we've done all the hard work on our node server. However, someone quickly picked up on the point of, okay, this is working. We've got a working proof of concept, but it's still our full node server, and it's against the kind of decentralized nature. You know, people will still be coming to us for payments to go through. So, okay, we said, well, our node server could become the merchant's node server. So we wrote some scripts that can be run by their tech team, and they can actually run their own full node server. We're not involved at all. There is no middleman. So you have the customer, and the merchant would control all of this, the node server and the website itself. Now, this was still a bit techie for us, having to get them to run a script. So we were working on a one-click solution where people without any technical teams can simply click a button and this deploys automatically. So they are completely in control of their own server and its workings. So this was an early demo, Matt's Pizza Shop. This is me buying a slice of pepperoni pizza. So if you didn't see it before, it showed a widget, which we talked about a moment ago. You click that, and it pops up this display. And this is quite common to a lot of people who have bought with cryptocurrencies. You have the QR code you can scan with your phone. If you're on a computer, you can just simply click, pay via the wallet, and that will automatically open up your wallet and start a transaction for you. Also, we integrated currency conversion, 32 different currencies that the merchant can say, I want to sell this pizza in euros or yen or sterling or Canadian dollars. They can decide how much it is in a common fiat currency, and it will automatically convert it to the amount of Bitcoin for them. And the user, in turn, can even convert that within their computer setup as well. So we've enabled currency conversion to make people's life even easier again. So we thought, okay, well, how are people going to get this widget and install it into their website? So we built a website called BTCPPay.com. It's up there nice and big. And we made it as simple as possible so people could go to the website, they could register, they could log in, grab their code in just a couple of minutes, put it into their website, and they're accepting Bitcoin private. So it's a lot simpler than a lot of other payment solutions that might need a lot of integration. You can just register, log in, grab the code, put it into your website, and you're done.